My fiancé texted, "I'm not marrying a broke man, either upgrade or I'm gone." I replied, "Your wish." Then I upgraded myself by leaving her. 60 hours later, her parents was desperate to reopen negotiations. This happened exactly 3 weeks ago, and I'm still processing the absolute chaos that followed. My name is Marcus. I'm 29 years old, and until recently, I thought I was about to marry the love of my life. Turns out, she was more interested in marrying my bank account than actually marrying me. Let me start from the beginning because this whole situation is completely insane and honestly reads like something out of a movie. I work as a mechanical engineer for a mid-sized manufacturing company here in Phoenix. I make decent money, around $78,000 a year, which isn't bad for someone my age in this field. I'm not rich by any means, but I live comfortably. I have a nice apartment, a reliable car that's paid off, and I've managed to save up about $35,000 over the past few years. I'm responsible with money. I don't have any debt except my student loans, which I'm paying off aggressively, and I was proud of the financial stability I'd built for myself. My fiancée, well, ex-fiancée now, is named Jessica. She's 27 and works as a marketing coordinator at a digital agency. When we met 2 years ago through mutual friends, she seemed perfect. She was beautiful, funny, ambitious, and we had amazing chemistry. She made around $45,000 a year, which combined with my income put us in a pretty comfortable position as a couple. We moved in together after 8 months of dating, and everything seemed to be going great. We split bills proportionally based on our incomes. We traveled together, went out regularly, and I genuinely thought we were building something beautiful together. She was supportive of my career goals, encouraged me when I was studying for my professional engineer certification, and seemed to appreciate the life we were building. About 6 months ago, I proposed to her. I'd been planning it for months. I knew exactly what kind of ring she wanted because she'd been dropping hints for ages. I saved up for almost a year to buy her a beautiful 1.2-carat diamond ring from a reputable jeweler. It cost me $8,500, which was a significant chunk of my savings, but I wanted to give her something special. The proposal itself was perfect. I took her to the same restaurant where we had our first date, and I proposed during dessert. She said yes immediately, started crying happy tears, and couldn't stop staring at the ring. She posted photos on social media within minutes, and all our friends and family were congratulating us. I felt like the luckiest guy in the world. The first few months of engagement were wonderful. We started planning the wedding, looking at venues, discussing guest lists. Jessica seemed excited about everything, and we were both contributing to the wedding planning process. We set a budget of around $25,000 for the wedding, which we planned to split between both families and our own savings. But then something started to change. Jessica began making comments about money that I initially brushed off as wedding stress. She'd make remarks about how her friend Sarah's fiancé bought her a 2-carat ring, or how her coworker got engaged to a guy who makes 6 figures. At first, I thought she was just venting or comparing notes like people do, but the comments became more frequent and more pointed. She started suggesting that I should ask for a raise at work, or that I should consider switching companies for better pay. When I explained that I was already well compensated for my experience level and that I was on track for promotions, she'd get frustrated and say I wasn't being ambitious enough. Then she started making comments about our lifestyle. She'd complain that we couldn't afford the kind of apartment her friend Rachel lived in, or that we should be able to go on more expensive vacations. When I pointed out that we lived very comfortably and took several nice trips each year, she'd say I was being small-minded and settling for mediocrity. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago. Jessica had been acting weird all week, distant, irritable, spending a lot of time on her phone. I thought maybe she was stressed about work or wedding planning, so I tried to be extra supportive and suggested we have a nice dinner together to reconnect. We went to this Italian place we both loved, and I was trying to have a normal conversation about our upcoming weekend plans. But Jessica seemed completely disengaged. She was checking her phone constantly and giving me one-word answers to everything I said. Finally, I asked her what was wrong. She looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before, like I was annoying her just by existing. She said, "Marcus, we need to talk about our future." I thought she meant wedding planning or maybe moving to a bigger apartment after we got married. But then she started talking about how she'd been reevaluating our relationship and whether we were truly compatible long-term. She said she'd been talking to her friends and family about our finances, and everyone was concerned that I wasn't ambitious enough to provide the kind of life she wanted. She said she loved me, but love wasn't enough if we were going to struggle financially for the rest of our lives. I was completely shocked. We weren't struggling financially at all. We lived comfortably, we had savings, we could afford everything we needed and most of what we wanted. I asked her what she meant by struggling, and she said she wanted to be able to afford a house in the suburbs, luxury vacations, designer clothes, and private schools for our future kids. I explained that all of those things were achievable with our combined income over time, but we'd need to be smart about saving and planning. That's when she got really frustrated and said I was thinking small and that she didn't want to wait 10 years to live the life she deserved. The conversation got heated, and she started comparing me to other men she knew who made more money. She mentioned her friend's boyfriend who works in tech and makes $120,000 and her cousin's husband who owns his own business. She said she was embarrassed to tell people what I made for a living. I was hurt and angry, but I tried to stay calm. I reminded her that when we got together, she knew exactly what I did for work and how much I made. I hadn't misled her about anything. If money was this important to her, why had she agreed to marry me in the first place? That's when she said something that absolutely floored me. She said she thought I would be more motivated to improve myself once we got engaged, and that she expected me to be making at least 6 figures by now. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She had been expecting me to completely change my career trajectory based on assumptions she'd never communicated to me. I told her that my career was progressing normally and that I was proud of what I'd accomplished. She said that wasn't good enough anymore and that she needed to think about whether she could really spend her life with someone who wasn't financially ambitious enough for her standards. The dinner ended awkwardly, and we drove home in complete silence. I was devastated. This woman I'd been planning to spend my life with had basically told me I wasn't good enough because I didn't make enough money. Over the next few days, things were tense between us. Jessica was cold and distant, and I was trying to process what had happened. I suggested we talk to a couples counselor to work through this, but she said there was nothing to work through either. I needed to step up financially, or we needed to reevaluate everything. I started questioning everything about our relationship. Had she always felt this way? Was I really not ambitious enough? Was I being unreasonable by thinking our financial situation was fine? Then, exactly 3 weeks ago, everything came to a head. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a text message from Jessica. When I read it, I literally couldn't believe my eyes. The message said, "Marcus, I've been thinking about this for weeks and I can't do this anymore. I'm not marrying a broke man. Either upgrade your income to at least $100K within the next 6 months or I'm gone. I deserve better than struggling financially for the rest of my life. Let me know what you decide." I stared at that text for probably 10 minutes, reading it over and over again. The coldness of it, the ultimatum, the complete dismissal of everything we'd built together, it was like getting slapped in the face through a phone screen. I was sitting in my office, surrounded by coworkers, trying not to have a complete emotional breakdown. This woman who was supposed to love me unconditionally had just given me an ultimatum based entirely on money. She called me broke when I made nearly $80,000 a year and had savings. She was demanding I increase my income by almost 30% in 6 months or she'd leave me. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got, not just angry, furious. Who did she think she was? I wasn't some deadbeat who couldn't provide for a family. I was a college-educated professional with a stable career and good financial habits. If that wasn't good enough for her, then maybe she wasn't good enough for me. I spent my lunch break walking around the building, trying to calm down and think rationally. But every time I reread that text, I got angrier. The entitlement was staggering. The complete lack of respect for me as a person was devastating. That's when it hit me she was right about one thing. She did deserve better, but not better than what I could provide financially. She deserved better than me entirely because I deserved better than her. I realized that this wasn't really about money at all. This was about respect, values, and what we both thought was important in a relationship. Jessica valued money above everything else, including our relationship. I valued partnership, mutual respect, and building something together over time. We were fundamentally incompatible, and it had taken this ultimatum for me to see it clearly. I went back to my office and typed out my response. I wanted to write a long explanation about how hurt and disappointed I was, but then I realized she didn't deserve that much of my energy. Instead, I kept it simple: your wish. I hit send and immediately felt this weird sense of relief wash over me. Like I'd been holding my breath for weeks and could finally exhale. But I wasn't done. Jessica wanted me to upgrade? Fine. I was going to upgrade by removing her from my life entirely. I left work early that day and went home to start packing her stuff. We lived in my apartment, so technically she was the one who needed to move out. I carefully packed all of her belongings into boxes and suitcases, making sure not to damage anything. I wasn't going to give her any reason to accuse me of being vindictive. While I was packing, I started thinking about all the things I'd compromised on or changed about myself to accommodate her preferences. I'd been molding myself into what I thought she wanted instead of being authentic to who I really was. I realized I'd been so focused on making her happy that I'd lost sight of my own happiness and self-worth. This ultimatum was actually a blessing in disguise. It showed me exactly who she really was before I made the mistake of marrying her. By the time she got home from work, all of her belongings were packed and waiting by the door. She walked in and saw the boxes, and her face went completely white. "What is this?" she asked. "It's your upgrade," I said. "You wanted me to improve myself, so I did. I upgraded my relationship status from engaged to single." She started protesting, saying she didn't mean for me to break up with her, that the ultimatum was supposed to motivate me to work harder. But I was done listening to her excuses and manipulations. I told her she had made her priorities crystal clear and that I respected her decision to prioritize money over our relationship. But I also had priorities, and being with someone who saw me as a financial provider rather than a partner wasn't one of them. She tried to backtrack, saying she was just stressed about the future and that she didn't really mean what she said in the text. But I pointed out that the text wasn't sent in a moment of anger. It was clearly something she'd been thinking about for weeks. Jessica started crying and begging me to reconsider, but I was completely calm. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again. I wasn't angry anymore, I was just done. I helped her load her stuff into her car, gave her back the ring which she reluctantly took, and wished her luck finding someone who met her financial requirements. The next 48 hours were weird. I felt sad. Obviously 2 years of my life had just ended, but I also felt this incredible sense of freedom. I didn't have to worry about meeting someone else's arbitrary financial expectations anymore. I could just be myself. I called my parents and my best friend to tell them what happened. They were all shocked but ultimately supportive. My mom said she'd never really warmed up to Jessica anyway, and that she always felt like Jessica was keeping score of things in a way that made her uncomfortable. My best friend Dave said he was proud of me for standing up for myself and that he'd always thought Jessica was a little materialistic, but hadn't wanted to say anything. On Saturday, exactly 60 hours after I'd sent that "Your Wish" text, my phone started ringing. It was a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, it was Jessica's mother, Patricia. Patricia and I had always gotten along well. She was a sweet woman who worked as a nurse and was married to an electrician. They were solidly middle-class people who had raised Jessica with good values, or so I thought. "Marcus," Patricia said, "I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Jessica told us what happened, and I think you two need to sit down and work this out." I was polite but firm. I explained that there hadn't been any misunderstanding. Jessica had made it clear that my income wasn't sufficient for her standards, and I had respected her decision by ending the relationship. Patricia started getting emotional, saying that Jessica was devastated and had been crying for 2 days straight. She said Jessica admitted she had made a mistake with the ultimatum and that she wanted to fix things. But then Patricia said something that revealed the real reason for her call. "Marcus, you have to understand, Jessica has been planning this wedding for months. We've already put deposits down on the venue and the caterer. Her dress has been ordered. This is going to be a financial disaster for our family if the wedding gets canceled." And there it was. This wasn't about Jessica's heartbreak or our relationship. This was about money, the same thing that had caused the breakup in the first place. I told Patricia I was sorry about their financial situation, but that wasn't my responsibility anymore. I suggested they look into their contracts to see what could be refunded or transferred. Then Patricia tried a different approach. She said that Jessica had been talking to her friends too much and that they had filled her head with unrealistic expectations about money. She said Jessica really loved me and that she was just scared about the future. I appreciated Patricia trying to mediate, but I explained that the ultimatum had revealed fundamental differences in our values that couldn't be fixed with an apology. Even if Jessica apologized, how could I ever trust that she wouldn't decide I wasn't good enough again in the future? Patricia got quiet for a moment, then asked, "What would it take for you to consider giving her another chance?" I was honest with her. I said that even if I wanted to reconcile, which I didn't, I would need to see genuine change in Jessica's priorities and values, not just regret about the consequences of her ultimatum. The call ended with Patricia saying she understood my position but hoped I would keep an open mind if Jessica reached out to apologize. About 2 hours later, Jessica's father called me. Robert was a straightforward guy who had always treated me well, so I was curious to hear his perspective. "Marcus," he said, "I'm going to be honest with you. Jessica screwed up big time. What she said to you was completely out of line, and Patricia and I are furious with her." He went on to explain that Jessica had told them about the ultimatum after I'd broken up with her, and that they couldn't believe she'd been so callous and materialistic. He said they had raised her better than that and were disappointed in her behavior. But then he said something interesting. "Here's the thing, son. Jessica's been hanging around with a new group of friends from work, and they've all married men who make serious money. I think she got caught up in trying to keep up with them and lost sight of what really matters." Robert explained that Jessica's new social circle consisted of women married to doctors, lawyers, and successful entrepreneurs. Said Jessica had been feeling inadequate compared to them and had convinced herself that she needed to upgrade her situation to fit in. She's been living in a fantasy world, Robert said, and now she's facing reality and it's hitting her hard. He told me that Jessica had been inconsolable since I'd broken up with her, and that she finally understood she had destroyed the best relationship she'd ever had over something as shallow as money. Robert asked if I would be willing to meet with Jessica to let her apologize in person. He promised that she understood the gravity of what she'd done, and that she genuinely wanted to make amends. I told Robert I appreciated his honesty and his perspective, but that I wasn't ready to have that conversation. The hurt was still too fresh, and I needed time to process everything that had happened. Robert respected that, but he said something that stuck with me. "Marcus, I want you to know that Patricia and I think of you as family, and we're going to miss having you in our lives. What Jessica did doesn't reflect how we feel about you." That call actually made me sadder than anything else. I realized I wasn't just losing Jessica, I was losing her entire family, who had welcomed me with open arms for 2 years. Later that evening, Jessica started texting me directly. The messages started with desperate apologies and escalated to her begging me to at least talk to her on the phone. She sent me a long text explaining that she had been influenced by her friends and that she realized she had completely lost perspective. She said she understood why I had broken up with her and that she deserved it, but she was hoping we could work through it together. She admitted that the ultimatum was cruel and unfair, and that she had been taking our relationship for granted. She said she realized that money meant nothing without someone to share your life with, and that she'd rather be broke with me than rich without me. But here's the thing, even though her apologies seemed sincere, I couldn't get past the fundamental issue. She had revealed her true priorities under pressure, and I couldn't unsee that. I also couldn't help but notice that her change of heart had come awfully quickly after facing the consequences of losing me. Was she really sorry about her materialistic attitude, or was she just sorry that her strategy had backfired? I decided not to respond to her texts. I needed more time to think, and I didn't want to give her false hope if I wasn't genuinely open to reconciliation. Next week was surreal. I kept getting calls and texts from various members of Jessica's extended family, all trying to convince me to give her another chance. Her aunt, her grandmother, even her teenage cousin reached out to tell me how sorry Jessica was and how much she missed me. It was clear that Jessica had launched a full-scale campaign to get me back, using her entire family as messengers. While I appreciated that they cared about both of us, it also felt manipulative. I finally decided to send Jessica one text to stop the bombardment. "Jessica, I appreciate that you're sorry, but I need space to think. Please ask your family to stop contacting me. If I decide I want to talk, I'll reach out to you directly." She responded immediately, promising to give me space and saying she'd wait however long it took for me to forgive her. It's been 3 weeks now since all of this happened, and I'm still processing everything. I've been going to therapy to work through my feelings and to make sure I'm making decisions based on logic rather than emotion. My therapist has helped me understand that Jessica's ultimatum was a form of emotional manipulation, and that her quick turnaround after facing consequences suggests she might not have genuinely changed her underlying values. She's also helped me recognize that I have a tendency to people please and accommodate others at the expense of my own needs and boundaries. This whole situation has been a wake-up call about the importance of being with someone who accepts and appreciates me as I am. I've been focusing on myself, reconnecting with friends I'd lost touch with during my relationship, and pursuing hobbies I'd neglected. I've realized how much of myself I'd compromised trying to make Jessica happy. Am I sad about losing 2 years of my life? Absolutely. Do I miss the good times we had together? Of course. But do I regret standing up for myself and refusing to accept being treated like a walking paycheck? Not for a second. Sometimes I wonder if I should give her another chance. Maybe she really has learned from this experience. Maybe she genuinely realizes that her priorities were messed up. But then I remember that text message, the coldness of it, the entitlement, the complete disregard for my feelings. That text showed me who she really is when she thinks she has leverage over me. I deserve to be with someone who sees my worth beyond my bank account. I deserve someone who wants to build a life with me, not someone who wants me to fund the life she thinks she deserves. Jessica got exactly what she asked for. I upgraded myself by removing her from my life, and honestly, it was the best decision I ever made. The irony is that she was right about one thing: I did need to upgrade, just not in the way she thought.